in 2010, and they never recorded that they had bought it, and they sold it to a hedge fund that we eventually bought it from. And because they didn't record it, you know, on the O&E it came back, and on the red underneath where the title search was, it said there's no proof that Aquin was ever on the title, and they had owned the note for over a year. And that's the thing. You have to be very, very careful with title, because a lot of companies never recorded that they own the note.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever have some issue with that, and you have to go to court and you have to prove ownership, you're screwed.
We went back on that note. We still wanted to buy it, but we wanted them to clear the title before we'd actually fund it. And after waiting 3 weeks and them not getting the title cleared,
It's now over a month. I mean, if they come back to us, we will buy the note because it's on a good property, but it's a performing note, so in Ohio.
Yeah, but we moved on, so that's a legitimate reason. If you find an issue with, if you go there and find out, oh, you know, you call, so I'll do it. I had a drive-by and the roof is completely peeling off the house, and you know that this is going to create a lot of damage if these people walk away because they don't have the money to pay the mortgage. They're not necessarily fixing the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go back in for certain things like that because of the value. The taxes are number one. If there's a lot of taxes out there due on it, yeah, I'm not to buy it at this price because I got to pay those taxes to clear the title to sell it again. So those are the legitimate reasons. It's because it's painted green and you would rather have it painted blue, doesn't work. Or in that. So when you're funding, when you're bidding, you make sure you have the funds available to close that deal.
Now, don't always be afraid of taxes either, because if you have a performing note, like we have, you know, we have a performing note that we bought for the group that has a certain amount of taxes on it, right? We have opportunity to still make money off that. We could buy those taxes and tack them onto the loan and get a higher monthly payment. So we have that option, or we could buy the taxes out at the tax lien sale. So there are opportunities. I would say taxes aren't necessarily, on non-performing they're bad, performing they're not as bad.
Can you use that as a negotiation for the price?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna pay less on a property with $10,000 in taxes than a property with no taxes. But
if they don't disclose it, you can come back to them and say, I
Yeah,
understand these taxes are here. I'm
The
willing
problem
to
with
pay
taxes
this."
that we run into and we see a lot, and the reason why you have to pretty much unless you know exactly what they owe as far as taxes, or they're up to date on taxes, you still have to do a double check with the county, because if it says zero taxes, you don't know that could have gone to a tax lien sale, and they're just not showing it on. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
So you have to be careful with that too.
When you call the courthouse, you basically ask, you want to know what the current taxes are on the property and are they paid up to date? And they'll tell you that real quick. That's easy right in their system. The other question that I usually ask is, was any of the back taxes sold in the tax lien or anything else that's outstanding there? And they'll have that information on their database too, and they'll tell you that right away. And they'll tell you who bought them and how to contact them to clear it out.
And then you also ask them when the next tax lien sale is. So you know if there are taxes due, you know, when it's gonna be sold and how long.
It's sometimes better to buy that tax lien yourself than it is to let it go to an investor who buys a tax lien, because the minute it does, you can get charged 20–30% interest on that.
Mm-hmm.
It can add up real quick. So it's better to stop that tax lien position if you can and just buy it. You roll it into the debt they owe you. So as a lender, you can protect yourself that way. Okay? All right, let's see here. In this section, the section 3, reviewing a tape, there's some things here about court. Now, when you're putting in a bid, there's timelines. You want to get the bid in. Sometimes they'll give you a deadline on the note, and sometimes it's just whoever gets to the door first gets the product. So you want to be able to move fast. So we do the preliminary check through, and we'll put in a bid. We may not have a drive-by on the property. We'll get one if we win the bid. We don't want to we're not doing an O&E report and net expense until we know that we've been accepted as the owner. And anything we find on that could give us our reason to back out of the deal or renegotiate. So it's a matter of getting in there. So it's a little bit of a gut feeling, just like you're looking at a property and you're trying to figure out, I need to get it for a certain price. You've done your evaluation. You're not hiring an appraisal to go in. You're not hiring an inspector to go into that property. You're working that, and you just need to make that decision. If the inspector then comes back and finds the problem, now you've got a term of negotiation. But if there's no issue with the property, you close the deal. Okay?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
How often are you finding that it's whoever gets their bid in first? Because I'm finding, most of the times when you place bids, that you have to sit around and wait until all the bids are in and then they decide.
Could I ask you,
Whoever the highest bidder is.
which seller is that?
Various ones.
Sometimes we don't know, but some,
Okay, because you're bidding
Yeah.
through somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay. So, here's the thing about a seller, right? Every bid that they say that they have is pretty much a phantom bid. They're lying to you to basically pump up the price.
well, frankly, even Gemini, that happened with
That's-
us with Gemini.
No, that is Gemini. That's
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Very good,
Okay.
gotcha.
Part of the reason why I'm not there anymore, to be honest. I had a big problem with that. And, basically, what sellers do is they're gonna push you until they know they can't push anymore, right? So they're gonna push you up, bring your bid up, and they're gonna push you so much that you're gonna say, no, I'm not interested.
And then they know.
Then 5 minutes later, they'll call you back and be like, oh, yeah, sorry, I made a mistake. You were the highest bidder.
Mhm.
That's just how the game is. I'm trying to change that now. Part of the reason why I want to build Fortitude is because I think if I, basically don't push the price up as much, but sort of get it to the middle to where I'm moving volume and getting my name out there, I'll make more money in the long term than just by, the whole thing with Gemini, valid Gemini, is instead of selling 100 notes, right, for a 10% markup, he sells 20 notes for a 40% markup. So, and that, that's a whole nother story, but, most of the other sellers, like Note Trader, I don't know if you guys know them.
We
do.
know them,
We
but
do
we-
actually, we put bids in with Note Trader,
Yeah.
but it was
Okay.
through another group.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so Note Trader, the way they work on a lot of things is they will do, and it's becoming a little bit more of a trend, and Note Trader picked up a lot of business because of it. And I give the group these contact names. Note Trader is just another vendor. He doesn't necessarily push. They just charge 3% of the sales price, and that's their flat commission. And basically that makes it, he doesn't care if you get it high or he gets it low, he's still
Right.
gonna make money either way. For instance, this pool that we just sent out of non-performing notes, I'm selling that for the seller, and he's paying me a 3% commission on that. So to me, it doesn't matter what price you get it at, and I'm not gonna push you up or down, it's just gonna be what the seller wants to accept. So, that's something else that, I'm thinking about depending upon the pool. Again, it's also on supply and demand. So whenever I'm talking to I always stay in very close touch with my competition, because I want to know what's going on and who has pools and what product they have. And I'm pricing all my notes based upon that. Are there times where one person bids a lot more than another? Of course, but it's not usual. Most of the time, it's if it's on a $50,000, if somebody bids $50,000 on a note, the next person's going to bid, 49. So that's where you could maybe make a little bit of a difference and go back and forth, and that does happen. But know your seller too. There's some. If you went to Val and asked him how a note works, he has no clue what the hell you're talking about. It all depends on what seller. Whereas Brandon at Note Trader has been in the business for 5 years and has actually done workouts and stuff like that. So
Okay.
hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks.
So I have a question about, so if your bid is accepted, then, do you have a certain amount of time to do your due diligence,
So
or do all the sellers?
Usually,
What's the process?
so it depends on the seller. A lot of sellers now, well, there's two things. A lot of buyers now are buying notes through their IRAs.
Mhm.
You have to have the right IRA plan. I've heard, and I don't talk negative about people I don't know, but I've heard some disasters about Equity Trust.
I agree.
You,
I've been with them for 5 years,
you know, that.
probably 5 to 10 years, and I would not
Well,
recommend
look,
it.
if you're buying a note through an IRA, you really need to tell the seller that you're using your IRA, because unless you set up your own IRA, LLC, and you've got checkbook control, it's gonna take probably not 3 days, but 5 to 7 days to get that transaction. And you probably should pay for the expedited service. Because even though, like Equity Trust says 24 hours on the expedited service, by the time you send them the documents and they review it, they're gonna come back with a question to restart their clock. And it's from the time that you answer their question that they put the 24 in. So if they ask you a question in 20 hours, and you don't get back to them until the next morning, that clock on 24 starts again on their expedited service. So even their expedited service can run as much as 3 days, because they'll keep plugging questions at you.
Now, back to your question, it takes, so, it used to be 72 hours, and for most sellers it is. But now sellers, based upon having a bigger piece of the pie, are really starting to not want to deal with IRA people for that very reason. Because they could sell the note to somebody that wires money to them in 48 hours, right? So a lot of them are starting to say 48 hours. But for the most part, it's 72 hours from when the bid is accepted to the final. Now, there.
And then can you get out for any reason? I mean,
Oh yeah, you can get out for,
buying a house, you know.
until you wire them the money.
You can always
Even
stop
if
the
you can-
transaction.
Listen, even if you sign that
Walk away.
sales contract,
Mhm.
in all honesty, saying that you are gonna buy it, they could technically sue you. In all honesty, they don't make enough money off each note for it to be worth them to sue you, right? So if you do wanna get out of something, just be very, very honest with them. Go to them with a reason why you're getting at it, you know? If you can't get the money, tell them, I don't have the money, you know? Now, or if you don't like something, tell them I don't like them. Now, as far as, just back to IRAs very quickly, there is a very good group in Philadelphia called Camaplan. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it.
spell
CAMA plan, .com. They are very focused on notes, and they will set you up so that you literally could get money within, the 24 to 48 hours. A lot of people are starting to move to them. They're not even close to as big as Equity Trust. And they do, go to their website, they do webinars all the time on notes, and we will probably eventually do a webinar with them. I know the owner there. Take a look at what they're doing. They're doing just as far as some other stuff, just housekeeping stuff. There is a conference on the 25th and the 26th for notes in Island, New Jersey. I don't know if anybody saw that, but if you guys want the information, I can send that out to you. It's pretty cheap. I think it's like $30 to get in. We're probably gonna go up there and just for networking purposes.
January?
Yeah, January. So if anybody wants to go, let me know, and we could always, we could carpool or something.
What's the date?
I think it's the 25th and the 26th.
There's also one on the 25th in Wilmington, Delaware, that's with PPR. PPR's
Oh,
having a
is there?
similar thing, yeah, I just had an email about it.
Oh, that's Camaplan.
That's the CAM plan, but the one in Island's different.
Yeah.
The two are
Two
different.
different, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very close friends with another second lien seller that's called USMR, and they're like the other PPR. They're starting to grow in the second lien space
In Philly.
in Philly. Yeah, so they're sponsoring the one on the 25th and the 26th.
Okay.
That's how I found
Is
out
that,
about
is
it.
that a Saturday and Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a Saturday and
is.
Sunday.
It is.
Could you send that information, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll send it out.
Excellent.
One thing back on the question about the timeline, sometimes when you get a tape, you have the ability to click on a tab to get the collateral documentation, and you can see that before you even bid. If it's available, it's expected you review it before you bid. If it's not available, then you have to request it. I want to bid, you win the bid, they'll send you the collateral information. My perception, the clock starts when you receive that, because you can't make your decision until you have that documentation and have time to review it.
how long does it normally take to get a collateral file? I mean, what's a reasonable
I'll
time
answer
to
that.
expect?
So, you know, it depends on the type of note, right? So there is a 2-week law, but the RESPA laws, that says that, you know, when you transfer a note, at least on the performing side, I don't know about the non-performing side, but on the performing side, they have to get involved with the RESPA laws, and it's a 14-day holding period until they could let go of the note. So usually,
It's transfer of the note, not the collateral.
yeah, transfer the note. I mean, the collateral on first, I mean, it depends on where you're buying the note from and if they have control of that collateral. You know, some of the notes that we bought for our group, we bought straight from a servicer. So they already have the collateral. They're just moving it over to you wherever, you know, you want it sent. And that's another thing that we're starting to look at too, is having somebody just service the note and housing the collateral at another company. So there's 2 other companies. One just closed to new clients, so we can't get into it. It was called CSC. But there's another company called Richmond Monroe. I don't know if anybody's looked into that, but they will do. I mean, Ken spoke to the person for 2
They were
hours.
at Noteworthy.
They were at Noteworthy.
Yeah.
Right across from you guys.
Yeah.
They offer some really good services, particularly for new note buyers, because you can ask them to review your documentation.
Oh, yeah, and for inexpensive, like $25
Yeah.
a file, yeah.
So they can do that, and they'll go through it for you, and they'll you know, if there's an issue in that. So for inexperienced people, it's kind of like a really good insurance policy.
And experience too. I mean,
Yeah.
for our non-performing notes, we're going to send it to Richmond Monroe for review.
So-
Richmond what?
Monroe.
Monroe.
So bottom line, to answer my question, within 2 weeks, they should be sending you collateral.
Again, it all depends on what. So, are you talking about on notes that are? I didn't realize I had it depends on how much the notes are, right? So if it's a $30,000 a house on a $30,000 note, usually that's where like all the paperwork's mixed up and there's missed signatures and stuff like that. Those could take a little longer. For the cleaner notes, like the ones that we're bidding on now, you're talking 2 to 3 weeks.
When you're talking to collateral, are you talking to review the collateral or the actual original collateral documents?
The documents, for them to send you the collateral documents after you put your bid in and after.
Oh, you're talking just the scan? You talking about?
Those are scanned documents.
Those take a day.
Those usually are a day, sometimes a couple days, like you said on the.
I thought you meant the physical collateral, like the actual
I think you
paperwork.
do mean the physical.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Once you bought the
Yeah.
note,
Yeah.
Yeah,
then there's a second, when you physically get the hard copy
Yes.
originals.
yes,
That's the second part of receiving collateral. First
Yeah.
is copies to review,
Okay.
then you close and purchase, then the other one. That can be a couple-week process, you know, from a few days to a couple weeks on that end.
And he actually got a shipment, because we sent it to his house, and it's literally like the physical collateral is what.
Yeah, it was in a manila envelope, and, you know, it wasn't too thick, it's about like this.
We just wanted to see what it was for our first note, like, because whenever I bought notes before, I just had it shipped to a servicer.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, might as
So
well try it.
I
for the
turned
first
around,
time.
I actually then scanned all the documents to keep on file, scanned all the originals, and put it back in a UPS package, and I sent it to our servicer,
Right.
who will then actually store the collateral for us and service them.
By the way, not a smart thing to do, because if anything happened to those, you'd be screwed.
Gone.
Well, it went registered, certified,
Yeah.
mail, and.
No, I'm just saying, you don't want to send it to your house, we just.
Right.
But ultimately, when you're
Right.
buying a note, it's getting shipped to someone else anyway, unless it's staying with the same
Yeah,
servicer.
exactly.
So that could
Correct.
happen, even if you're not the middleman.
Yeah.
But as being the middleman, we wanted that registered signature and everything else, because those are tracked documents, and that not just, you don't send any of this regular mail. Okay? All right, we're gonna move on now, because I wanna jump into, the due diligence part. Well, actually, the due diligence reviewing the tape, 3A. One of the things about due diligence that I wanna make sure everybody understands, it's the very first part on section 3A due diligence. You cannot contact the borrower during this process. And if you have an agent and you're asking them to give you a price in that town, and you're asking them to do a drive-by, this is an inexperienced person who doesn't have a clue what they're doing in investing. You want to make sure that they understand that they do not stop and talk to the owner of the house because he's sitting on the front steps having a beer. You tell them that they are to have no contact with the homeowner. They simply give us a valuation, shoot us a couple pictures as they do the drive-by. We don't own the note, so we're not allowed to actually contact them until we are the owner of the note. So that's the number one rule, and don't get yourself. The servicers for the drive-bys that you use, they understand this. But when you're doing like a local agent, just trying to get them to help you out, you want to make sure that they don't stop and have a conversation. Oh, I'm talking to somebody, they're buying your mortgage, you know, that type of thing. You're a nightmare for them, because you technically kind of set them up as your representative. So make sure that, you know, you just want this, please don't stop and talk to them or the neighbors, that type of thing. Okay?
After you bought it though,
After you bought it, now,
and then that's when you start talking.
you start talking, but not the day that you bought it. When you buy the note, the person that sold the note, their servicer has to send a goodbye letter to the homeowner. Your servicer that's going to take over the note will send a hello letter. These are two documents that have to be out the door and transferred before you can talk directly to them. You cannot make any advanced calls. So there's a little window of time, and this is anywhere from a week to a month for these processes to take place.
I'll take your question in 1 second. But, you know, and the other thing is you have to really, really be on top of these servicers, to be honest, like when things first start. Because, for instance, you know, with the first note that we bought, the other servicer never canceled the forced insurance, right? And never gave us any information on the forced insurance. So we had to do our own new forced insurance, and it cost more than the old forced insurance. So the borrower is saying, oh, I want to send this amount. We're like, wait a second, you have to now send this amount. Not a big difference. It was $4 different. $4?
It's $10.
$10 difference.
$10 difference a month.
Yeah, but you know, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like it was bought from somebody, and insurance prices have gone up since that policy was taken out a year and a half ago.
And
So
the borrower, this is a performing note, the borrower was paying, he was paying his $460 a month, then he was for the mortgage payment, but he was really paying like $509, because that was what was needed to cover the forced place insurance. The new policy went up, so he needs to pay about $518, I think. So I had to get on board with the servicer because they keep getting confused about setting up the escrow. And then now they want to set up escrow for taxes. This gentleman's on his own workout program paying taxes separately. We don't need to escrow money for the taxes on the property. He's taking care of that and making the payments directly to the county and city. But the servicer keeps wanting to manage it like the bank. But in these notes, there's little nuances. So we told him you have to go back to the borrower and say his payment is not for $509, it's going to be $518. And that way it will cover our entire cost for the forced place insurance. Unless he wants to get personal insurance, and then we can pay it in escrow or whatever, but he doesn't have insurance currently on the house, so we're putting insurance on there to protect our investment.
Do either of you ever speak with the borrower yourselves, ever?
you know, we are.
Not yet.
We are, so there's a few things about that. Number one, a majority of the states now are changing laws. It's not because they care, to be honest. It's more of a money grab. You know, they could charge $500 for a license. They could charge another $2,000 for classes. And basically, I never knew this until I spoke to the servicer that we bought a note from. They service about 30,000 notes. And he told me, he's like, we started getting a ton of people coming to us saying that they were getting fines from states because they were reaching out to the borrower. And then they went out and did it, and they said that there's something like, 18 states in 2014 are going to make licenses for debt collection, that only a servicer could call the borrower. Now we'll look into the notes that we buy. Historically, I never wanted to do it because I just didn't want to deal with the headache and have to go back and forth, and you have to document everything. And for a servicer to do it for $65 for a $50,000 note, is it really worth my time to sit on the phone with a borrower that's gonna curse me out for an hour? Probably not, but I mean, people do it, especially on the second lien side. Tons of people do it on the second lien side.
Yeah, but being a debt collector is now requiring a license. And like Georgia, the fifth note you buy in Georgia, you have to be a licensed debt collector, and you actually have to be a physical address within the state.
I will tell you that if either of us should do it, it's Ken, because I would just tell most people to go screw themselves, to be honest.
You're a deadbeat.
Okay, loser, what are you
Okay,
sending me this
right.
month?
And if not, go play in traffic.
Right.
Good cop, bad cop.
That was basically my question because I thought Ken was saying that he would talk to the borrower.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be on a note-by-note basis.
Okay.
It's not all the states, not even 50% of the states are there yet, but it's gonna be soon, requiring the licensing. So there are a lot of people doing notes that will make the contact themselves and do the workout. I know in Ohio, there's some note investors I met at a conference, and they manage all their own notes. And they do the calls, they actually go personally out to people's homes and talk to them. So, but that's when they're buying in their local area. You're not gonna find a note very easily in this market. You're gonna be buying a note in Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, other states. So you're not physically there, so just let a servicer who knows the rules of collection and the privacy laws just take over for you. That's my opinion on that.
James?
Well, they've been changing a lot of the rules and regulations as far as licensing and that for hedge funds and for investors.
Well,
And it's even to the point where they're becoming a little bit leery of the fact that to be an investor, even to buy one home, you
Well,
know, that you're gonna have to get these licenses because
It's
they're
yeah,
getting.
it's a little
regulated.
different because hedge funds on a mass scale, for instance, I mean, the biggest owner of, the two biggest owner of notes in the country, non-performing besides Ocwen, are Angelo Gordon and Blackstone, and also Marathon Capital as well. They have their own in-house servicers. So they go and hire 20 loss mitigation people for the 100,000 notes that they own. So those guys will just license in every single state. It costs nothing, $500 for 50 states.
Angel Gordon.
Yeah.
Marathon.
So, basically, it depends on the size of the hedge fund. A guy like Gemini, Jack's never gotten on the phone. He buys everything in bulk. He'll buy 30 notes, and if 22 of them work out, he's happy, and if the other 8 don't, it's part of doing business. He just wants to make a return for his investor.
No, but they're talking on a much smaller scale
Well, what
with people buying.
what they don't
notes.
what the big issue is you, me, or somebody here calling up a borrower and not knowing all the laws. There's the Fair Debt Act that you have to follow. There's certain privacy laws that you have to follow. There's one law that you can't even call based. I have to find out the name of it, but it came out a couple of years ago that you can't even use information, like if you have certain personal information, you can't use that against a borrower, right? There's just, for me, like I said, for $65 per note per month, it's not worth the risk of getting sued by a state or by a government or anything. For instance, PPR tried to go after it's a well-known story. They tried to go after somebody themselves in Ohio. And that person basically went to some little-known state agency and complained. And they bought a note for maybe $3,000-4,000, and they got fined $10,000 by Ohio for some type of privacy act that they didn't even know about. And it happened about a year ago. So, there's just, you don't want to get, you could get involved, or you could not get involved. I'd say unless you're professionally trained, or you're a professional loss mitigation expert, you probably don't want to be calling people.
Let's keep this going here. In this section 3A due diligence, page 2, there is some resources. O&E reports, the very first one, abstract, that's the one we've been using. They've been real responsive, and their O&E reports are usually really easy to read, and they're detailed. So I'm gonna bring one up in a little bit and show you what it looks like.
When you know what you're looking for, an O&E report takes about 30 seconds to read, literally. You just go bam, bam,
All
bam.
48 pages of it, huh?
Well, you only look at the first three. The rest is just, so you'll see a lot of these, it'll be the first three of all the information you need, and then another 100 pages of
Yeah,
basically everything that's been, that
Right.
the county has seen in the past 10 years.
So that's not where you're looking for. I thought that report was looking for the